Hi everyone, welcome back. We're going to begin creating the UV template for our CAN model. And basically what I'm going to do is start off with the main body of the CAN. That's going to be the more complicated section. And then what I'll do is move on to the ring pull and the little rivet there. So basically what we want to do is sort of work out which sections of the model are going to have sort of textures applied to them. Or image files applied to them. And for this model, basically there'll be one that fits on the top of the can, just in this area here. So we'll need to make sure that we definitely get that area kind of formed into a nice clean template. And also the main body of the can will also have a texture placed on it. So we need to make sure that we get that area as well in particular. Now there'll be a few areas that don't have an image applied to it, primarily the bottom of the can, more or less from this sort of edge here down. This will be just a plain metal kind of finish, and that predominantly can be produced just in Maya without the use of any images. Likewise, the areas around the top of the can, mainly this lip area and this recess, also will have pretty much the same type of metallic, silvery material applied to it as well. So all the other areas we absolutely have to have templates created for them, as they're going to have images placed on them. And the areas where we have materials, we'll still need to kind of create basic templates, but we can be a little bit sort of more rough with those areas. They're not really going to be affected as much. So let's jump straight in and create the first section of our template. So you'll see here, obviously in the little intro video, I went through the process of splitting up your viewports. So we've got our UV editor over on this side and our perspective view on this side. So the first thing I want to do is basically get all of this current existing template for the can basically moved over into this sort of empty space over here. Every time we create a new piece of template for a model, it automatically places it in this corner of the grid. Now, on occasion, that can actually become a little bit more difficult to work with, because basically the section of the model that you're creating a template for will overlap the remaining parts of the model if we leave them in this location. So what we're going to do is move them out of the way. Now, with this model, because this entire object basically should be in one piece, technically what we should be able to do is come up to this icon just here called the Move UV Shell tool. Basically, this section of the template is referred to as a shell. So it's essentially all of the sections of a template that are connected together with one another. Now, your template eventually will be made up of different shells. So what we do is we select this tool and we just click somewhere on this part of the template. And what it'll do is automatically select all of the UV points on anything that's connected to the area that you click, so any part of the shell that you click on, and it gives us these move handles. Now, keep in mind that this is not the move tool. You can see that the move tool, the regular move tool, is over here. It has the same functionality with the added automatic selection of all of those UV points, but it's not actually the same tool. So what I'll do is just drag this across over to the side here. Okay, it doesn't really matter where you place this. You could place it up here if you wanted, or over here, but I'm just going to place it here for the time being. Now, when you use the Move UV Shell tool, you need to switch it off when you finish with it. Now, the reason for that is that if you try and select, for example, edge mode or vertex mode or face mode to select parts of your model, it won't actually allow you to change the mode while the tool is active. And it can actually deselect all your objects if you try and do that. It doesn't really cause any major problems with your file or your model, but it just makes the workflow a little bit more tedious because you have to then reselect things. So what we'll do is turn this off by hitting the little select arrow button. And then we'll just deselect those UVs by clicking in an empty spot in the grid. So the first section of the model I'm going to create a template for is the top of the can. I'm starting here because this is the easiest section to do. So to begin with, I'm going to right click and hold on the object and just select object mode for a minute. And basically what I want to do is hide the ring pull and the rivet just so it's out of the way. So to do that, with the can selected, I'm going to click on Isolate Select, and that'll just hide temporarily the ring pull. So now I can see the top of the can clearly. And basically what I want to do is select all of the polygons on the top of the can up to this small edge or small row of polygons just here. Okay, if I zoom in on this, you'll be able to see it a little bit more clearly. So everything in the middle of the can up to and including this very small row of polygons. So to do that, I'm going to right click and hold on the object and select face mode. And I can now select the polygons or the faces in the object. And starting from the second row of polygons from the middle, so not these little triangles here, but the next row out, so these ones here, I'm going to just left click and select one polygon like this, and then I'm going to hold shift down and double click a polygon next to it, running around this ring. And that will select the basically this loop of polygons. So now what I can do, in order to quickly select the rest of the polygons out to this edge just here, I can hold down the shift key and then tap the full stop key repeatedly. So basically shift full stop will expand the selection out in increasing polygon rows like this. So you can see here I've gone up to here. I want to select these ones as well. So I'll just hold down shift and tap the key, the full stop key again, just so I get out to that point. Now technically I could kind of go another one or another two. That would be okay. All right, but I'm sort of just choosing to go to about here. The reason I'm choosing to go to here is that this is the last polygon that's actually basically horizontal. After that polygon, the next one actually starts to curve down into this groove. So I'm really just kind of grabbing the more horizontal polygons here. So this is our first selection. What we're going to do now is create a UV projection of this part of the model. So to do that, we have to come up to Create UVs, the menu at the top of the screen. Once again, this will only be active if you have your menu set status set to polygons just here. So we go to Create UVs, and I'm going to come down to Planar Mapping and go into the Options, like that. So Planar Mapping, basically I've chosen this option because the surface that I am going to create a projection for is a flat surface. If we look at this from the side, basically it would form just a flat level surface. Unlike the sides of the can, which have this curve to them, they're basically a cylinder. The ones at the top here are just a flat surface, a plane or a planar surface. So basically that's the reason. We need to select the mapping option that's closest to the actual form that we're creating a template for. So now what I need to do is work out which direction I need to create the projection from. So basically, if you look directly at the surface of the polygons that you have selected, so from this direction, rather than looking at them from the side, okay, if you think about how you're going to draw over the top of this in Photoshop, you need to be able to see the polygons clearly to be able to draw on them. So if I look at it from this angle, I can't really see them because basically they're just a line. Okay, they're all in line there. Whereas from the top, I can see them all clearly. So this is where we want to project from. And the direction that I'm looking at the polygons from is along the y-axis, which we can see sort of here. My view cube is telling me I'm looking down from the top, and if I look here, the y-axis is the one that I'm sort of looking along. So what I want to do here is select y-axis from project from. The next two options just below, or the next option just below, is keep image width height ratio. What I want to do is make sure that's ticked, and most of the time you should probably have that ticked. What this is going to do is basically make sure that the projected polygons are added to the template, but they're not stretched to fit inside this dark grey area of the grid. If we had a rectangular object and we were doing a projection of it, and this was switched off, it would actually stretch the rectangle to form a square in here rather than keeping it in a rectangular shape. Now the problem with that is that that will cause our textures to stretch on the object later on. So what we want to do is make sure we're keeping the height and the width of the template in here equal to their proportions over here. So we just make sure that this is ticked. So once we have that, we just press project. So what this has done is created a part of a template for the top of our can. Now you can see we've got this little kind of wireframe with some handles on it, these little blue, red, green squares, and we can kind of see this replicated over here. This is basically the mapping projection that's appeared, and basically we can actually edit this by moving it around. In this case we don't want to, but sometimes, for example, when you're doing a cylinder, you might have to rotate the projection around until it sort of lines up with the cylinder that you're projecting or creating a template for. So that's what that is. So you can see here we've got this, we've now got basically a kind of unpeeled, flattened out, separated version of the top of the can, and that's sitting just here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this up out of the grid so that I've got room for the next piece of the can. Now at the moment, this, you can see how this has actually scaled itself to the size of the corner of the grid, this quadrant. Each piece that we map will scale itself to fit in this area, and what that's going to do is make some parts of the can bigger than others. So you can have a very, very small part of a can or a model that over here is very, very tiny compared with the rest of the object, but in here it could actually end up being bigger. And we're going to address that later on. But for now, what we want to do is basically get all of this templated into here so it's all nice and neat. So once you have this, this part of the template here, you can just deselect by clicking in an empty part of the grid. When you do that, you'll see the rest of the can appear, or the sort of the rest of the original template, minus these polygons. So basically what will happen is, as we template this object, parts of this will disappear as we convert and transfer them over here by using the mapping tools. So let's do the next bit. The next thing I want to do is basically create a template for the main body of the can, just here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off just here, and I'm going to select a polygon and then hold down Shift and double click the polygon next to it, and you can go either direction. Okay, and I'm going to once again expand that selection out. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and tap the full stop key. So there's one tap and there's two, and what that's done is kind of come down to this first edge. Okay, I'm going to basically from this point on select the rest of the polygons, but I'm not going to do it in this perspective view. Basically I want to select all the polygons up to this row just here. In order to do that, I'm going to change this perspective view temporarily to the side view, or the front view you could use as well. So to do that, I'm going to come up to the panels menu, and I'm going to come down to orthographic and then select either front or side. It'll be the same in either case. Okay, so I've selected the front view. Now you can see here that basically now I'm looking at the object from the side, and I can clearly see these polygons in this area that are not selected yet. So what I'm going to do is hold down Shift and Control on the keyboard, and what this will allow me to do is drag a box across these polygons, and it will add those polygons to the already selected polygons without deselecting any of these ones that are already selected. So I'm just going to click and drag a box across until I get to about here. Now I'm not going up above the can, and I'm not going too far up these polygons. Okay, I'm just going to just over this line just here, and make sure you come right out the other side of the can over on this side as well. So to about there. And when you let go of the mouse button, you'll see that they select. Then I'll just switch my panel back to the perspective view. So that's panels, perspective, perspective. And very quickly, what I'm doing is having a quick look in here to make sure none of these polygons in this groove are selected, and that none of the polygons on the top of the can are selected. Okay, if they are, what you can do is hold down Control and then click on them to deselect them. So you can see there I've got basically the whole side of the can selected like that. Just double check you've got nothing on the bottom selected either. So now what we need to do is create a projection map of this selection. So we come back up to Create UVs, and we go, this time we're going to go down to cylindrical mapping. And that's because basically the selection that we have at the moment is a cylindrical shape. It's definitely not flat, so we can't use planar. It's not spherical, it's not a ball. Okay, it's a cylinder. Automatic mapping generally you would use for things like cubes, objects that sort of have, they're more boxy in shape. So in this case, we're going to use cylindrical. We'll take a quick look at the settings, just so you can kind of have a little bit of an idea of what's in there. Really with these, there's nothing, okay? Essentially, you've just got insert projection before deformers. Really, there's nothing in here that you need to change. So normally with cylindrical projection, it's easier just to go create UVs and just click cylindrical mapping and let it do its work. But I just wanted to show you those, the lack of settings in here, because it's a bit different to the planar mapping that we did before. So we'll just press project like that. So over here, you can see that it's basically created this rectangular shape, okay? And it's actually placed it kind of hanging out of the sides of the grid at the moment. Now that's okay. You can see over here that we've got this projection cage that's appeared, and it's basically lined up and fitted itself to the cylinder because we have a very kind of clean cylinder shape. Okay, it's a very even shape. So it's basically fitted nice and neatly, which is great. It sort of means a minimum of kind of adjusting for us. So with that projection done, I'm just going to take this, I'm just going to click inside this yellow circle just here. I'm just going to grab that yellow circle and drag up, just move this sort of up and out of the way over here, and then deselect like that. So we've got the top of the can, we've got the main label area of the can as well. So the last thing, the second last part we'll do is the bottom of the can. Now there are obviously what we could do is do a selection the same way that we did with the top of the can, where we select a ring and then expand that out. We could do that. The other way would be to actually select that area inside here. Okay. So in order to do that, we're still in face mode. You can see there we're able to select polygons. What you could do is drag a box across part of this template. Okay, you can see there that it didn't like that. If I right click and select face again and then drag a box, you can see that that selects. And if we have a look down here, it's basically selected all of the polygons at the bottom of the can. So that's another quick way of selecting things, and that's quicker than actually, selecting a polygon ring and then expanding the selection out. So you can select it like that. Okay. Otherwise, what you can do is what we did before, which is, click on a polygon, hold down Shift, double click a polygon next to it, and then hold down Shift again and just tap full stop until it selects all the polygons. Now the problem with this is that you may not remember which polygon to stop on. So what you do is, as you're clicking full stop down, one after the other, you can see them selecting over here. Now eventually a polygon is going to select on the bottom of the side of the can. So if I see just there, so I've gone one polygon too far. So I need to backtrack the selection down a polygon. So what I do is hold Shift and hit the comma key, and that reduces the selection. So full stop increases the selection, comma reduces the selection. So once I get back down to that position, and none of the other polygons are visible up here, I can now create a template for that. So what we do is go to Create UVs, and we can come down to planar mapping again. Now, even though this is sort of an odd shape, technically we could, because it's got some depth here, some thickness, we could use cylindrical mapping. That would be okay. But also we could kind of just map it from this direction, and we would probably end up getting more of the polygons visible this way. So I'm going to do it as a planar map from the y-axis again, the same way that we did the top. So I'm going to go to Create UVs, planar mapping. Now technically, because we used y-axis planar mapping just before, I should be able to just hit planar mapping like this, and you can see it pops up. If it doesn't, for whatever reason, just go to Edit, Undo, and then pop back up to Create UVs, planar mapping. Go into the options and set this up here using the y-axis and keep image width height ratio. Just press project. So you can see you can do it both ways. Okay, so there's the bottom of the can. So what we're going to do is just move this off to the side. And notice that I'm kind of moving it in a different area. So the first top of the can section we did, I moved here. Then when I did the sides of the can, I moved that up here. And then the bottom of the can, I'm moving here. And that's just so they don't end up overlapping one another. It's okay if they do, because we can just move them around using the Move UV Shell tool again, the way that we moved the very first template. So you can always do that, but sometimes it's helpful to kind of just spread them out a little bit. First of all, it means we won't have to kind of tweak things as much afterwards. Okay, so we've really only got one section left for the main body of the can, and that's sort of the remaining polygons around this lip at the top. So what I'm going to do there is just drag a box across the remaining polygons, and you can see now it's just selecting this area up here. Now with these ones, once again, we could, probably do a y-axis template from the top, or what we could do is a cylindrical template from the sides. And I think that that's going to be the way I'm going to do this one, as a cylindrical template. So I'm going to come up to Create UVs and select cylindrical mapping, and it will spread them out like that. Now notice how this is stretched up to fill the upper quadrant vertically all the way, when in fact these polygons are actually only very, very narrow. They're only about this deep. So this is what I was talking about earlier, where it will actually stretch to try and fit over here. So I'm just going to bring this across like that. So you can see there I've got all those parts. Now I'm going to switch off the Isolate Select so that my ring pull and my rivet reappear. And I'm just going to right click and hold and select Object Mode over the top of the object. And then I'm going to select the ring pull and the rivet by holding Shift and clicking them both. And I'm going to do a planar template from the y-axis again for these. So we'll just go to Create UVs, planar mapping. I'm just going to click that, and that will create a template for our rivet and for our ring pull. Now in this case, because I've selected both objects at the same time and created a template for them all at once, they're now scaled to one another in here, so they're actually in proportion to one another over in the template, which is fine. However, what I want to do is separate them both. So what I need to do first of all is deselect and then select Move UV Shell Tool again, and I'm going to click on the rivet here in the middle of the ring pull, and I'm going to pop over to my tool settings tab and just open that up. And what I like to do is untick Prevent Overlap. Usually with this tool it's switched on, and if you try and move an object and you move an object so it's sitting over the top of another object, it basically will jump out of the way so that it's not overlapping, and it just causes a lot of headaches when you're trying to work quickly. So I just turn it off, and it works now like the move tool. So I'm just going to move this up and place it here in the middle of the hole in the ring pull, and then I'm going to drag a box across them all, okay, like this, and I'm going to move this down here, just out of the way. So then we turn off the tool, deselect by clicking in an empty spot in the grid, and then right click and hold and select Object Mode. And that's basically all of the main areas templated for the can, and all we need to do is kind of clean the template up. So if you drag a box across all those areas of the can, you can now see all the different parts of the object. So we've got the top of the can, we have the main label area for the can, the main printed areas, the sides, we have the bottom of the can, we have the upper lip, the top lip of the can, and then we have the ring pull and the rivet. So I'm going to leave this video here. In the next video, we're going to take all of these components, all of these shells for our UV template, and we're going to place them, we're going to fit them all and scale them all and fit them into this upper corner of the grid, and then we can export that template out and use it in Photoshop as a guide. So with that said, I'll leave this video here, and I will see you in the next part.